The mic is hot. Let's break this down. Okay, stop. Stop scrolling. I actually had to read the transcript twice this morning because I refused to believe they were this sloppy. The Supreme Court just took a sledgehammer to the president's favorite toy, and the administration's response? It isn't a legal defense. It's a confession. If you're watching the mainstream coverage right now, you're hearing a lot of soft words. They're calling it a strategic pivot. They're calling it a contingency framework. It sounds responsible, right? It sounds like they have a handle on it. They don't. I want you to look past the headlines and look at the sheer panic happening in the West Wing right now, because U.S. Trade Rep Jamieson Greer didn't just go to the Atlantic Council on December 10th to give a speech. He went there to float a trial balloon for a disaster. He stood there and admitted, out loud, on a microphone, that if the Supreme Court rules against their emergency tariffs, they are just going to copy-paste the exact same tariffs into a different law. Do you understand how insane that is? Imagine you get pulled over for speeding. The cop says, "I'm arresting you for speeding." The judge says, "Speeding isn't an arrestable offense," and the cop immediately says, "Okay, fine, then I'm arresting him for jaywalking," but he's still going to jail. That is what your government is doing with billions of dollars of the global economy. They used the IEEPA, the International Emergency Act, to bypass Congress. The court said, no. Now they want to use Section 301. Why? Because they are addicted to the cash. They have spent that tariff money 10 times over. If they lose this case, they don't just lose future money, they might have to issue refunds. We are talking about a $200 billion hole blowing open in the federal budget overnight. This isn't a pivot. This is a frantic scramble to rewrite the rules before the check bounces. And the scary part? They think you won't notice if they just change the acronyms. Well, we noticed. Let me show you exactly how they plan to hijack the trade laws to save their own skin and why your wallet is the collateral damage. Okay, before we get into the backup plan and why it's a total disaster, we have to look at the crime scene. You need to understand how we got here because the administration is counting on you having a short memory. Let's rewind to the before times. Remember when trade policy was boring? I mean, really boring. It was guys in gray suits negotiating for 3 years to lower the tax on Canadian lumber by 0.5%. It was slow, it was methodical, and most importantly, it was done by Congress. You know, the people you actually elect to handle taxes. For decades, the average U.S. tariff rate was under 2%. It was a rounding error. You bought a toaster, you didn't even notice the import duty. Then came the catalyst. On April 2, 2025, everything changed. The president didn't go to Congress, he didn't ask for a new law, he reached for a dusty old Cold War relic called the IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Now, this law was designed for literal nightmares. It was written so the president could freeze the assets of terrorists or stop trade with a country that was actively attacking us. It is the nuclear button of economics. But the administration looked at that button and said, you know what? Let's use this to tax everyone. They declared a national emergency on trade deficits. And just like that, they slapped reciprocal tariffs on nearly every country we trade with. Boom, 10% here, 50% there. And here is the straw man they want you to believe. Every time you turn on the TV, you hear a spokesperson say, "We are making China pay," or "We are making Mexico pay." Stop. Let's look at the actual lawsuit that triggered this Supreme Court case. It wasn't filed by China. It wasn't filed by the Mexican government. It was filed by an American company called Learning Resources, Inc. They make educational toys for kids. In 2024, they paid about $2.3 million in tariffs. Manageable. In 2025, under these new IEEPA emergency tariffs, their bill jumped to $100 million. China didn't write that check. An American company did. And guess what happens when a company's tax bill goes up 4,000%? Do they just eat the loss? No, they pass it to you. That $100 million is in the price of your kid's math set. It's in your sneakers. It's in your car parts. This isn't a foreign tax. It is a sales tax on you laundering through the border so it looks patriotic. But here is where the reality check hits hard. The administration got addicted to this money. We're talking about nearly $200 billion in annual revenue coming from these tariffs. They're using it to plug holes in the deficit. They're using it to promise tax cuts elsewhere. And now the Supreme Court is looking at the IEEPA and saying, wait a minute, this law says you can regulate trade. It doesn't explicitly say you can tax it. The justices are realizing that the president effectively seized the power of the purse from Congress. And if they strike it down, that $200 billion vanishes. Poof, gone. So, enter the false hope. This is why Jamieson Greer was sweating at the Atlantic Council. He told the world, don't worry, if we lose IEEPA, we have other tools. We have Section 301. We have Section 232. He wants you to think it's just a matter of switching paperwork. He wants you to think, oh, they'll just use a different form and the money keeps flowing. But I'm about to show you why that is a mathematical and legal impossibility. You can't just switch to Section 301 overnight. The system wasn't built for speed, it was built for evidence. And if they try to force it, they aren't just going to break the economy, they're going to break the law, again. Let me explain the mechanism of why this backup plan is doomed to fail. So how does this actually work? How do you take a $200 billion illegal tariff and magically make it legal overnight? You don't, and that's the problem. Let me give you an analogy so you can explain this to your uncle at dinner when he asks why his pickup truck just got $5,000 more expensive. Imagine you are a landlord. You have a tenant, let's call him Global Trade, and he pays you rent, but you want more money. So you declare a safety emergency. You say, the building is on fire, everyone pay me double or get out. That is the IEEPA. It's the fire marshal shutting down the block. It's instant, it's powerful. It assumes you are right because, hey, it's an emergency. But now the Supreme Court is basically the city inspector, just showed up and said, there is no fire. You faked the emergency. You can't charge double rent. So what is the administration's backup plan? They want to use Section 301. Section 301 is like filing a noise complaint. To evict a tenant or raise rent using a noise complaint, you have to prove they were loud. You have to log the hours. You have to hold a hearing. You have to give them a warning. You have to follow the process. What Jamieson Greer and the White House are trying to do is use the noise complaint law to trigger an immediate, total building-wide eviction in 24 hours. They want to skip the hearings. They want to skip the evidence. They want to look at the law that says investigation required and cross it out with a Sharpie that says, trust me, bro. And here is the catch-22. They're trapped in a room with no doors. If they follow the rules of Section 301, it takes months. A proper Section 301 investigation, like the one we did on China back in 2018, took merely a year. You have to interview industries. You have to calculate damages. You have to prove that Germany and Japan and Vietnam and Mexico are all cheating us at the exact same time. But they don't have months. They don't even have weeks. The moment the Supreme Court finalizes that ruling, the IEEPA tariffs vanish. The revenue stops, the money spigot turns off. So they have to cheat. They have to rush the Section 301 process. They have to sign an executive order that says, we found everyone guilty, no trial needed, pay up. Wait, stop, take a breath. I want you to really think about what that means. We are talking about the United States government, the architect of the global legal order, openly saying the process doesn't matter, the result matters. It sounds crazy. I wish I was making this up. I wish I was reading a script from a bad political thriller, but this is the strategy. They are betting that they can break the administrative law faster than the courts can fix it. But here's the domino effect. This is where it hits your house. When the administration tries to force this square peg into a round hole, the lawsuits won't just come from American toy companies, they will come from everywhere. Domino 1, the arbitrary and capricious lawsuit. Every major importer, Ford, Walmart, Target, Apple, will file an injunction immediately. They will argue that the administration didn't do the homework required by Section 301. And guess what? They'll win, because you can't prove unfair trade practices against the entire planet in a weekend. Domino 2, the revenue cliff. While those lawsuits are stuck in court, the tariffs get paused. Remember that $200 billion I told you about? The money the government is spending right now? It stops. Domino 3, the bond market freakout. This is the boring part that kills your retirement account. The U.S. government sells debt, treasury bonds, to pay its bills. Investors buy that debt because they think the U.S. is stable. If the U.S. government suddenly loses 5% of its revenue because a court struck down its tariffs and then tries to fake a new law to get it back, investors get scared. They stop buying bonds. When they stop buying bonds, interest rates go up. Your mortgage rate goes up. Your car loan rate goes up. The cost of carrying your credit card balance goes up. So, because the White House didn't want to go to Congress and ask for a law properly, you are going to pay 8% on your mortgage instead of 6%. That is the mechanism. It's not about protecting American steel anymore. It's about protecting a revenue stream that they illegally created and now rely on like a drug. And we are approaching the point of no return. The moment Greer or the president signs that order switching to Section 301, they're crossing a line that hasn't been crossed in American history. They're declaring that the executive branch does not need Congress to tax the people. They're declaring that if Plan A is illegal, Plan B is just do Plan A harder. They're gambling with the full faith and credit of the United States, and they're doing it with a pair of twos in their hand. The Supreme Court called their bluff, and instead of folding, they're trying to flip the table. But when the table flips, the chips don't just fall on the floor, they fall on you. So where does this train wreck actually land? We've talked about the shell game, we've talked about the legal panic, but now I need you to look at the road ahead, because there are only two ways this plays out, and neither of them is pretty. Let's play out the best case scenario first. And when I say best case, I mean the Fantasyland scenario that the suits in Washington are praying for. In this version, the Supreme Court strikes down the IEEPA tariffs, and Congress, yes, our dysfunctional, gridlocked Congress, suddenly decides to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. They rush back from recess, they pass a bill in 48 hours that says, hey, we retroactively approve all those illegal tariffs the president made up. It's all good. Keep the money. If that happens, the crisis is averted. The Constitution takes a hit, sure, but the economy stays stable. The prices you pay stay high, but they don't spike. The market's calm. But let's be real. Do you think this Congress can agree on a lunch order, let alone a $200 billion retroactive tax bill? No. So, here is the ugly truth. This is the scenario you need to prepare for. The administration triggers the backup plan. They invoke Section 301. They try to brute force the tariffs back into existence, and the world explodes. Not with bombs, but with lawsuits and trade barriers. The moment we switch to Section 301, we're not just fighting the Supreme Court anymore, we're fighting the world. Section 301 requires proof of unfair practices. When we skip that proof, our trading partners, Europe, Canada, Japan, they stop being polite. They will retaliate. Immediate, targeted tariffs on American goods. They will target Kentucky bourbon to hurt the Senate Majority Leader. They will target California almonds to hurt the Speaker of the House. They know how to play this game better than we do. They will target the things that make your local economy run just to put pressure on the White House. And remember that split Greer talked about? breaking up the USMCA, separating Canada from Mexico? That is the economic equivalent of trying to separate Siamese twins with a chainsaw. The North American auto industry, the cars you drive, the trucks that deliver your Amazon packages, is built on parts crossing those borders 6 or 7 times before a car is finished. If they blow up that deal to save face, the price of a Ford F-150 doesn't go up by $1,000, it goes up by $10,000. Plants in Michigan and Texas shut down because they can't get parts from Monterey or Ontario. This is the fallout: chaos in the supply chain, uncertainty in the stock market, and a government that is so desperate for cash that it starts looking at your 401k as the next piggy bank. Now, let's zoom out. I want you to close your eyes and picture the world in 2030 if this continues. If the United States proves that it doesn't follow its own trade laws, if we prove that a contract with America is only good until the president wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, the global system collapses. By 2030, we aren't the leader of the free world anymore. We are just a big, angry island. You'll see a world where the dollar is no longer the default currency for trade. Why would Brazil or India sell oil in dollars if the US government can just seize their assets or slap a 100% tariff on them illegally? They won't. They'll trade in yuan. They'll trade in gold. And when the demand for the dollar drops, the value of the money in your savings account drops. We are looking at a future where Made in America is a luxury, not a standard. A future where you can't get certain medicines or electronics or car parts because the trade war has turned into a trade blockade. It's a world where the rules are gone and might makes right. And in that world, the little guy, you and me, we always get squashed. So what do? I'm not here to tell you to build a bunker. I'm not selling you freeze-dried food. I want you to take practical, sanity-preserving steps. First, accept the price hike. Stop waiting for prices to go back to normal. If this trade war escalates, normal is gone. If you need a car or a major appliance or a laptop and you have the cash, buy it now. The supply chains are about to get messy, and scarcity drives prices up faster than inflation. Second, watch the rates. If you have high-interest debt, kill it aggressively. If the U.S. bond market gets spooked by this legal chaos, interest rates are going to stay higher for longer. You do not want to be carrying a variable rate loan when the federal government is effectively defaulting on its legal obligations. Third, don't panic sell. The stock market is going to have a seizure when the Supreme Court ruling drops. It will dip, it might crash, but unless you are retiring next Tuesday, do not sell at the bottom. This is political volatility, not a meteor strike. The companies will eventually adjust. They always do. Fourth, and most importantly, be the signal, not the noise. When your friends or your coworkers start freaking out because the news says trade war, you be the calm one. You explain it to them. Tell them it's not a war, it's a collections dispute. The government overspent, they got caught breaking the rules to pay the bill, and now they're scrambling. When you understand the mechanism, when you know it's just a desperate backup plan by a panicked administration, it loses its power to terrify you. It just becomes another problem to solve. The establishment counts on you being confused. They count on you getting bored by acronyms like IEEPA and Section 301. They count on you shrugging and saying, well, I guess that's just how it is. Don't give them that satisfaction. You know the truth now. You know the score. The king of tariffs has no clothes, and he's asking you to pay for his new robe. Keep your eyes open, keep your wallet close, and don't let them gaslight you into thinking this chaos is normal. It's not normal. It's desperate, and you're smarter than they are. I'll see you in the comments.